Welcome to Interruptions podcast, where we have heartfelt and sacred discussions about our culture, faith traditions, and community. We invite guests who are open and willing to share their journey and disrupt the silence on their personal and professional interruptions that have impacted their lives as it relates to emotional wellness. My co host Kathy and I are passionate about every episode and are committed to providing actionable advice that you can apply today to reinvent yourselves and on your life journey and encourage you to develop a path towards healing. Welcome back to Interruptions. We are now in our second half of our series, the parking lot series, and we have a new guest for our second hour. We'd like to welcome to the room Jodi Hill-Lilly. And Jodi Hill-Lilly is the Deputy Commissioner for Connecticut Department of Children and Families. So for you all that are trying to figure out what that is, DCF. Okay. So we are welcoming my friend, good Jodi Hill-Lilly, to the room.
Hi, Jodi.
Hi, and thank you for that wonderful welcome. Appreciate it.
I always feel like when people say DCF, I feel like we need to say the full name so people understand the full impact that agency really has.
Department of Children and Families.
Because it is so much bigger than three letters.
Yes, but most
Absolutely.
people don't know what it means. So
That's
when you
right.
say DCF, well, why didn't you just say that? But, even though, Jodi, thank you for being our guest for our show today, the second half of our show. But even though that is your title, that is your job, we are not going to spend much time talking about that today.
No.
No. So, Jodi, we're not going to talk. Question I have for you: tell us something about you that people don't know. So if we Googled you, we know we can find out your resume, your work history, you're on LinkedIn, share some photos of your family on Facebook. But if we Googled you, tell us something that we don't know about Jodi Hill-Lilly.
Hmm. Something you don't know.
That is safe to share.
Hmm. That's safe to share. Absolutely. Let's see. Well, I sing. Odell, you know that. I don't know that
Yes.
everybody knows that,
I
but
did not know that.
I have I have been singing for most of my life in church, and when I was in college, I had a group called New Sounds, and we went all over the place singing in Connecticut, into other states, and we were pretty well known. And I married a minister of music. I belong to Liberty Christian Center in Hartford, Connecticut, and still singing to this day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Still singing,
See,
yes.
got you, Kathy. See?
Yes, I met Jodi when we were at Varick Amy Zion Church in New Haven when
Okay.
she used to live in New Haven. So we had joined the church. Her brother, Reverend Hill, Jeff Hill, was the associate pastor, youth pastor, and Jodi and I clicked and had a great friendship. But I have to tell the Jodi, I don't know if you remember this, but I have to tell this story. So when I joined the church, John was about 6. So Jackie was 8. And, we're socializing and John's at the church. He sees Jodi and he gets older and he has a crush on her, right? But he's 6. And it continued until it just continued.
Aw.
So Jodi gets married and she leaves New Haven. She goes to Hartford. She sends us an invitation to come to the reception in Hartford. And John and I go, and John is mad. The whole ride up to Hartford, his arms are folded. He's like this. And I'm like, what are you mad about? She could have waited.
Oh,
She could have waited. And I'm like, dude, you're 11. Like, really? So we get to the house and we think it's her house, but it's her brother in law's house. And John is standing, he's about 11 years old.
uh-huh.
He's standing in the kitchen. He looks up at Jodi and he says, you could have waited for me. Her husband is like 5 feet away. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get kicked out of the house.
That's funny.
Oh man.
And you were kind. You looked down at him because that's how short he was, and you was like, "Oh, that's so sweet." And he was like, "But you did good." He's looking around at the
Oh, so
house.
he approved.
He approved.
Okay.
So
All right.
he's still walking around the house looking at, "Okay, she did good. Yeah, she did all right." And Jody said, "John, go outside and enjoy yourself." He sat down on a bench, crossed his arm, and just was looking like, "She could have waited, Mom." And I don't know if you remember that, but
I
it
do.
he was so mad.
That's
Yeah, he was a big personality and a lot of fun, and that was a special moment.
that's
I
funny.
remember that so vividly. That
She's
look,
like,
that look,
she's
looking
like,
at
oh,
us.
that was coming back, right? That's cute.
To
That's
just
adorable.
to be so bold, to be
Yeah,
so bold, and it's like,
Mm,
"You coulda waited
I
for
love
me."
it.
mm,
Listen, I love
mm.
it. I love it.
Wow. Yep. Well, we miss him. We really miss him and value and cherish those moments
Yeah.
when we have all those memories. So thanks for bringing that back to me.
That's cute. So, Odell, I know you said that we're not going to talk about Jody's position at her job. I do
Okay.
just want to give recognition to her for that. It is not an easy agency to work for, and it never has been. And especially since the pandemic, their cases have just imploded, and just different types of situations. I don't think anyone would ever have imagined would have come to their attention. And so, I want to give her kudos for actually staying, first of all, and staying in that position. It is hard. I know, because I'm retired out of Department of Social Services, and I know whenever you work with people, it's not easy.
Mhm.
But certainly, we know the challenges that both agencies are facing now. And so, again, just kudos to her. And I'm glad that she actually took time to be with us today, because really she should be taking a really long nap to get ready for work. To get ready for work, but I appreciate that.
Well, I thank you for pausing to take a minute and to acknowledge the work that we do. Over the years, we have worked really hard to change the reputation of the department, to be further upstream and to really try to only intervene in those families' life who actually need it. And we try to support as much as possible. And you're right, the acuity rate of the kids and families that we've seen has spiked tremendously. There are a lot of children and families out there hurting, and we are doing our best to be supportive in nature as much as possible and keep kids home safely as much as possible. That's our aim. So over the years, we have really changed, and we are working hard to change the reputation of the department. DCF has a negative connotation, or historically it has had a negative connotation, and we're looking to really change that narrative, and to be of support to the families, and so that folks can understand the array of supportive services that we do have out there for our kids and our families.
Jody, thank you. What does it mean? What does your title mean? Deputy Commissioner. What is it that you do?
So I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I've been at the department for 34 years. I started in 1988. And so I started as a line social worker, and held various positions in the social work chain of command. The overwhelming majority of my career was spent in the training division, where I climbed up the ladder in that division to become training director, and from there I was appointed as deputy commissioner. So deputy commissioner of administration, there are two deputies within the Department of Children and Families. One is over operations, which is those staff who touch families and kids directly. I'm on the administrative side, which means that I'm over fiscal services. I'm over all of the community service array that's out there. I'm over workforce development, which was, kind of where I spent the majority of my time, in that division, and over multicultural affairs. And I am the executive sponsor for our racial justice work. So I do mostly the sort of administrative side, supporting the operations.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I should
And
say that I report directly to the commissioner, who reports directly to the governor.
Yes.
all right. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have an amazing, fearless leader in Vanessa Durante. She's an incredible leader and has
Yes.
done a tremendous job at leading that agency. And it's an honor and a privilege to work for her and with her.
You know, both of you all have mentioned the pandemic,
Mhm.
and what Kathy and I talk about are interruptions in our life, and we don't want to assume that the pandemic was your interruption. So, what we'd like for you to do, Jodi, if you could think about your interruption in your life that had you to pivot and to change, and something that you did not expect. We talk about an earlier podcast that as women, we're taught to go to school, go to college, get a good job, get married, have children, the picket fence 2.5 and the cat, the dogs, and so forth and so on, and have your friends, kids, yes, idolize you, all that, all the great stuff. But those things in life interrupt our life because that's not what life is. Things happen that we did not expect in our planning. So can you think about something that would be your interruption in life?
Sure. I think I've had a few of them, but for the most part, my childhood was pretty stable, not without, problems and challenges like most of us, but two-parent household, did okay. Went to college, you know, um, in New Haven. That's how I ended up in New Haven. I'm a two-time graduate of Southern Connecticut State University. So I did that and I got married. I have a great husband, and we got married in Jamaica. We had a destination wedding. And when we were in Jamaica at the wedding, my mother fell.
Mm.
This was April 2002. And we're thinking she had gotten very thin, and we're just trying to figure out, what's going on with her. That was April 2002. By August of 2002, she had made arrangements to be transported to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Chicago, where she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So she had been sick for a while, and she knew she was sick, but she didn't tell anybody she was sick. She had been sort of taking care of herself and her wounds. She had breast cancer. She presented as if she had a mastectomy, and she didn't. The cancer was visible to the eye. The tumor was visible to the eye, and I just couldn't believe that she had been suffering so long with cancer, and didn't say anything and didn't seek treatment. Um, she They got her back. Cancer Treatment Centers was amazing. It was an amazing intervention. They got her to the point where she was in remission. I started having children. She didn't want to go back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. She wanted to stay local so that she could be with me as I'm having my kids. I was her primary caregiver at the time, myself and my brother Jeff. And the cancer came back, and it was like 5 years later, she passed away. So we had her for 5 years, but she passed away. That was a major interruption because what was, you know, the the best time in my life. I just got married. I'm having kids, and I am dealing with my mom having a terminal illness, one to which she succumbed. So eventually.
Jodi, I have to ask. I remember I was working for your brother, helping to design his church's website when your mother passed, and my condolences then and now. And I saw how hard it was for him, You mentioned that your mother was self-treating herself and didn't say anything. Did she ever say why?
She was afraid. I don't, and I see this in, in our community even now. With the pandemic, you see people just really being, distrustful of doctors and hospitals. I think we had, I think the death of my aunt, who was very young. I mean, I think she was in her 40s when she died. She had a breast cancer, it was a very aggressive form, and she watched her pass away. And I
Okay.
think that scared her. And she didn't want to face the possibility of going through chemotherapy. So she thought, she was treating herself. In fact, the people at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America said she did an incredible job keeping herself healthy because she started doing herbs and looking up things. And I mean, and they were amazed at how healthy she was outside of this cancer. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it was fear. Um,
Okay.
I think it was just fear.
And how did you all end up in Chicago going to a cancer treatment center in Chicago?
Well, my mom was a very prideful woman. She dressed every time you saw her. She was just amazingly dressed. She was very poised, life of the party kind of a person. And I think that she just wanted to find somewhere where she didn't have pity. She didn't trust the people here, so those commercials come on TV, and she was like, "Hey, I want to go there." And she called and got herself admitted somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow. Yeah.
And what did you think of the center there? How did you find out that she had made this appointment and you said you were her caretaker? So did you go with her to Chicago?
Well, she told me, she said, "I'm going to tell you, but I don't want you to tell anybody. You can't tell your brother, you can't tell your father, you can't tell anybody. I'm getting on the plane and I'm leaving today to go to Chicago."
Wow.
I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Oh no.
I said, "For what? For what? What's wrong?" And I said, "Okay, okay." I said, "How do you know you have cancer?" She goes, "I know. I just know."
Mm.
I said, "Did you go to a doctor?" She said, "Trust me, I just know."
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, mind you, I'm getting blindsided by all this. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea. And so I said, "Okay, I, I can't not tell my brothers. I have to tell them."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I'm going to come." I booked a flight and I came like the next day so that I can manage her care. I mean, I left my brand new husband at home and just went. Um, and I, do what I do. I had to step up and figure out that she was at stage 4 cancer. She was on her deathbed. Um,
So Jody, you said that she presented as if she had a mastectomy. Who did she present that to?
I mean, when you looked at her physical body,
Okay.
one would think she had surgery, and she
Okay.
didn't.
Okay.
I mean, it was traumatic. I mean, she really did not take care of herself, and the tumor was visible to the eye.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's how much she had kind of neglected herself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very traumatic for me to see that, to know that she was so scared that she wouldn't go take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Jody, you mentioned your family. You said two family household. Your four brothers. You said four brothers.
Four, one,
Four
two, three,
brothers.
four.
And are you the only girl?
I am.
And where are you in the mix?
I am in the middle, but I am in charge. Let's be clear.
I think we all understand that.
We're all like 2 years apart.
Wow.
So so we're very close in age. So you know, so that worked out well because we relate to one another. And, I'm the only girl, but, you know,
Hmm.
I'm in charge.
And mom's
I
like,
love
don't
it.
tell your brothers. What was it like for you growing up with four brothers?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I didn't have to worry about much. They're very, 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 very protective to this day. I mean, they're still like that to this day. Um, they were mean, but inside the house, but protective. I got called
Okay.
all kinds of names. I got tough that way. I think I got really tough that way because you had to be. I was with four brothers. They would take your food. They would call you names. They would punch up. They do all kinds of things. They wouldn't let nobody else touch me, but it was free reign for them because I was a little tad bit on the spoiled side.
Yeah.
So, so
So, so four
yeah,
brothers and you're spoiled. Who spoiled you, mom or dad?
my father for sure. My father for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, and he died in 2020. My mother was only 65 when she died, so that was a major interruption and really pretty traumatic. My dad was 94, so he lived a nice long full life and was ready to go. He
Yeah.
died of cancer as well
Yeah.
in 2020 during the pandemic.
Mm.
So, Jody, did your father know that your mother had cancer, or it was just a
We,
surprise to everyone?
we didn't know. We
Yeah.
didn't know either. Yeah,
Mm,
we didn't.
Wow.
She
That's a
came.
lot of pressure.
yeah.
Hmm.
That is a lot of pressure on you. And so you didn't have time to get used to. Mom has already packed her bag. She's getting on the plane, and it's just a matter of fact. She's calling you and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm leaving."
Hmm.
And first of all, don't tell anybody. And you
Hmm.
said, "Yeah, no, I am telling everyone." And what does that look like? Because you already have your breath taken away from you, and so what did that plan look like to share that information with everyone?
Well, you know what we do. Um, I, you know, I went into this mode that I'm very familiar with. You just go into this mode where you do what you have to do.
Hmm.
And I was very I was on a mission. First I had to figure out what was going on. I had to talk to the doctors. I had to figure out what we were doing. And I remember the doctor said stage 4 cancer. They were like, if we don't treat her, she's gonna pass because we have to be aggressive in this treatment. And I am a true. I would say I'm a spiritual person. I'm in church most time when the doors open, but I don't like religion. I just don't all the time. But
Hmm.
Hmm.
when the rubber meets the road, I know who to go to. And I
Yeah.
just remember very vividly praying and God telling me under no uncertain terms, sis, she's not going to die now. She's not going to die. So I got all my brothers together and I said, listen, this is what we're gonna do, and this is what we're not gonna do. We're not gonna
Hmm.
talk about death, okay? We're gonna
Hmm.
talk about life because she's not gonna die right now. So I need everybody on one accord, okay? If you can't be
Nice.
on that accord, you can step aside. But right now we're gonna speak life, and they got with me, and we just nursed her back to health,
Yeah.
and she was in remission for a while before the cancer came back. So I think I just went into do what you got to do mode.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
Jody, what was the experience like for you in Chicago when your mom obviously gets there before you because she's already headed to Chicago, and you're both from out of state. You're coming from Connecticut to Chicago. Mom has four-stage cancer. What was the treatment, the rapport like for you at the Chicago Center?
I'd never seen. Well, it's my first introduction to cancer, right? So I'm thinking this is normal, but I get off the plane and they send a limousine to come get me. Number one,
Mm.
all free of charge. I get there and there's a team of doctors. Now she's got stage 4 cancer, which means it spread to multiple parts of the body. And in one room, a team of doctors come to me and tell me, very clearly what's going on, how it's impacting all of her other, places in the body and what needed to happen. They talked about treating the whole person, her mind, body, and soul. So they had a spiritual component, they had a nutrition component, and then they, of course, had the chemotherapy that they needed to administer to her. They put you up in a hotel that's close to the hospital. I was there every day. I got to go in and see her. I got to talk to the doctors every day. It was as if I was in a it didn't feel real because it just all happened so fast.
Okay.
But I felt like I was in a crash course, and I had to catch up,
Yeah.
and I had to figure out what we were doing, and I just had to bring God with me. I don't even know how I got through that. I don't know. I don't know how I got through it. I just did.
And when did your mother decide to come back to Connecticut for care, the rest of her care?
So they got her stabilized after about it was probably somewhere around 6 months or something like that. So I was going back and forth to the camp to Chicago, back and forth. Oh my God, that was a nightmare. But then she went into remission. They got her stable enough. She would come home, and then she would go out every 3 or 4 months just for checkups periodically, just to make sure everything was okay. And that's the time when I had gotten pregnant and with my first child, and she was like, okay, let's switch the care to Connecticut because I don't want you flying back and forth, when I have to go out there, if something goes wrong or whatever. Let's switch the care over. So we switched to Connecticut, and ugh,
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I heard. Oof, what
it
happened?
was not
What was
good,
the difference?
not good. Well, I learned how most people experience cancer treatment, and you know um if so you have you have someone who's treating, the oncologist who's responsible for treating the cancer in general, and then you have your general practitioner. Those are your main people. But like it started spreading again, and so it went to the bone. So then she would
Mm.
have to see somebody for that, and then it spread to the lungs, and then she had to go see a pulmonologist for that, somebody who treated that. And the treatment was in different places with doctors that didn't talk to one another.
Mm.
And
Oh,
I wasn't used to that. I was introduced to the cancer world through the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and I became very, very informed about her treatment. Like I had a vocabulary that was I learned later was hugely advanced. So I would go and ask questions, to some of the doctors to say, I'd say, what's her levels like? And they were like, well, it's good now. And I said, well, tell me what the levels are, because I know now how to interpret what I know the numbers and all that.
hmm.
And
Mhm.
one doctor got really belligerent with me, quite frankly, and said, you need to go plan your mom's funeral rather than
Oh,
questioning my expertise.
that's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yes.
So, Jodi, at the beginning of your story, thank you for sharing all of this, and
Yeah.
we know how difficult this has to be for you, but it is important to hear for our audience to hear this information, because at the beginning you said that obviously cancer, we hear that word and we immediately get fearful. But you said at the beginning it was more than that for your mom. She was fearful of the doctors or the treatment here. Is that what you were sharing?
Yeah, and the way they acted, I kind of get it now.
You get it
You
now,
get it.
right? Yeah.
But I will tell you that if I learned anything out of that, is that you just have to have early detection is just everything.
It
She had
is.
a very slow moving cancer in the very beginning. It didn't have to get that out of control. And had she gone earlier, she probably would be here today.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So fear got the best of her, and so you need a combination. You need a combination of somebody who is not only somebody you trust, but somebody who knows what they're doing, and to really find the right um, doctor for what it is that you're dealing with, and but the option should never be to not do anything. I
Mhm.
guess that's the lesson in all of this.
So, Jodi, thank you. Um, in case our listeners are have this perception of you because of your job title and can hear that you're educated, 2 degrees from Southern, and are classifying you in the upper rich class classification. And they're saying, well, that's why she can afford to go to Chicago.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to us a little bit about what that experience was. So we don't want people to think that you're, and you could be rich and hey, can afford Chicago. What would you say to our audience who has this perception of you based on listening to you and hearing parts of your story and going back and forth to Chicago?
So, first of all, my mom could not afford to go there. I don't, a large part of what they do there is through donated services. And so they take on situations like my mother's. And because she didn't have the money nor the insurance to pay that outright.
Mm-hmm.
When I tell you that was the grace of God, that was the grace of God that
Mm-hmm.
she was able to secure that kind of support. And so no, and I didn't. My mother and father were not rich by any stretch of the imagination. We were we grew up very poor. I didn't realize how poor I was growing up, because my dad managed to get us, off, Westland Street in Hartford at the time and bring us to Windsor, which is a middle class neighborhood, but we were the poor folks in Windsor. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes we had food, sometimes we didn't, sometimes we had lights
Yeah.
and heat, and sometimes we didn't, So I didn't grow up rich at all,
Yeah.
at all. And my parents were not rich. They were, ones that had made it out of the neighborhood but still struggling. Like I said, I think I didn't realize government cheese was government cheese until I started working at BCF. I'm like, oh, that
Oh,
block cheese
listen.
was like, remember that block cheese?
That's
Oh,
right.
yes, that block, that was some
That
good cheese.
it was some good
That was some
cheese.
good cheese. Better than the cheese we get in the store.
Yeah.
In
That's
Cheese
Boston,
toast.
it was
Come
government
on.
cheese.
Egg cheese, your cheese toast, the cheese, you do all kinds of
That's
stuff with that
right.
cheese.
That's right.
That's
And it was made great macaroni and cheese. That was the best. When you actually had to grate it. Now you just buy
Yes.
it off.
Oh,
Mhm.
that was some definitely some good cheese back then.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Now,
absolutely.
you grow up with 4 brothers.
Mm,
You're the only girl. House
mhm,
of 5, mom and dad. You get married,
mm.
and your husband. Do you now have sister-in-laws?
I do. Um, so this is interesting. So my brother is Howard K. Hill, the Howard K. Hill. It's my brother, and he's married to Nancy Hill, who is my sister, and she's my sister, not my sister-in-law, my sister.
Okay.
And so we're close. And then my oldest brother, Fayon, he lives in Glastonbury. He's married to Kim, and she's my sister. She's not my
Okay.
sister-in-law, she's my sister. The other two, and my youngest brother just got married. He's married to Rachel, and she's brand new, but she's my sister. Uh, Jeff is not married. Then I married Sean Lilly. Now I told you I have 4 brothers.
Right.
I married Sean Lilly, who has 3 brothers.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I have been surrounded by men like all my life, like all my life. And even New Sounds, when I sang with New Sounds, they were all men in me. That's the
That's
way that
right.
goes.
You were
Mhm.
the only
I was
female
the
in the
only
group.
female. I was the only female. So I have these girls. First baby I have is a girl, and they start growing up and whining and crying and stuff. And I looked at my husband. I said, "What am I? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with this." He was like, well, you think I do? I don't have any sisters. I was like, well, I don't. He was like, but you're a girl. I said, but I grew up with all boys. I don't know what to do with this.
And
Like
the hair and everything, right? I know.
hair. And I was like, oh my God. Oh
That's
Lord.
funny.
So,
Um,
Jody, how many children do you have, and how many girls do you have?
we have three girls. So I have a bonus daughter. My husband
Uh,
had a daughter when we got married. She came into my life when she was 4.
okay,
So I've pretty much been in her life. I'm mommy J to her. And then I have two additional girls. I have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old, Victoria and Alexia.
That is so funny.
girls.
That's
Girls,
that
girls. And I still
Girls.
wake up and say, whew, goodness. And they're great girls. They're good girls. There's not that. It's just they're emotional. And
yeah. And you never were,
I
right?
never was. Not that I don't have emotions, but like the things they get emotional over, I just don't
That is so funny.
Yeah, that's
That's funny.
Jody.
And then
I'm sorry. In raising your children, when did you realize, in being married, when did you realize that you had become your mother?
oh God, I started saying things she would say.
Mhm.
Like
Mm.
they start hanging out with the wrong people when I say birds of a feather flock together. And I'm like, this
I
mom-
have not heard that in so long.
Yes.
That is funny. That is true.
don't you go out there acting uncouth. You
That's
don't
right.
Oh, your mother said uncouth too.
uncouth,
Yes.
That was my
uncouth,
mother's word.
the
Don't
Mhm.
uncouth. That's
don't uncouth.
That is so
you
funny.
And
started.
it was like, what?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You start sounding like them. You start acting. I'm like, oh my
And
goodness.
you represent this household, so you better act right when you go
That's
out of here.
right.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
right. Go out there embarrassing me. Don't
That's
Yes, my mother was a chef and was in New York, and I grew up in Boston with my relatives, and she would make sure that I knew how to eat before we went out.
mm-hmm.
And if we went out to eat in public and we used the wrong fork or had our elbows on the table, she would kick us
Mm-hmm.
underneath the table.
Mm-hmm.
Many times we would leave limping, you know, and folks were like, "What happened?" You'd be like, and we didn't say
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Don't say nothing.
And she was like, "You will not be uncouth with me." And we
That's
were,
right.
and we're looking like each other, like, "What does
What's
uncouth mean?
uncouth? What's that?
What is she
What's
talking?"
that? What is that? Yeah.
And I used it on Jackie. You will not be uncouth. You will know how to do this. And she would look at me. I'm like, don't ask, you know, don't ask, but you will not be uncouth.
Yeah.
Jackie. Again, I thank you. This is so much fun. But I know the story is hard for you, and I thank you for sharing that story. Um, and so medicine certainly has advanced now, and still we have fear in our community of going to the doctor and taking the appropriate test. And obviously we're so much more educated now, but I know that myself, one of my good friends is a breast cancer survivor, and only because she said something did I say, okay, I need to get it on the ball and actually go get my mammogram, because it wasn't a test that I made sure that I was on time to get when I was supposed to get it. I just didn't. I think it was I use the excuse, I'm a mom, I'm working, I'm busy, and I don't have time. I don't have time to go get the test. And then ultimately, based on her journey, I did, and I said, okay, get it together and go get this test. And so, and it is a frightening test, and I knew something was going wrong when they went from the actual mammogram and then started to do an ultrasound. And you are fearful, and no one's talking to you, telling you why they're doing this, but just to say, well, we really couldn't read it on the mammogram, so we want to get an ultrasound done. And then ultimately, I did get a positive result when they called, and it was almost I wasn't prepared for it, but it was almost a relief just to hear and say, okay, I know it now. I have to deal with it. And I have been blessed that I was a breast cancer survivor, but it is that initial fear. And then also it's an interruption to not only your life, but your family's life. And now you have to go and you get multiple other tests as a result of that. And, when they were planning on going in and doing the initial surgery, I had a vacation plan. And that's the attitude I went in to the surgeon and said, okay, yeah, I know this has to be done, but I got a vacation plan. And I can see out the corner of my eye, my husband's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I don't care. Cause I didn't look at him because I was like, I got a vacation plan. I got to go on my vacation. And so you kind of just, you go into this zone like, okay, God, you have jokes because I just don't have time for this right now. This is interrupting my life. But ultimately for me, I did survive the breast cancer. And so I'm very grateful for that. But it is fearful to go in and get those tests. And we know they're necessary, but you almost need counseling before going to the test to learn how to breathe and to learn how to, know the right questions to ask. And we did not do enough of that, sharing that in our community. And since then, I think what we can continue to do is just to encourage people on the importance of it and taking someone with you because when they called me, I heard half of what they said to me, to be honest with
Mm.
you. um, and so you have to know what they're telling you so
Hmm.
you can share that information. Like you said, you became more educated
Hmm.
in more terms than actually were shared with you. And so I know that there's after tests. Did you also have to take the BRCA test? Did you volunteer to do that, or how did you feel about that?
Well, first off, thank God for the blessing of you being a breast cancer survivor, and absolutely, God walks with you, and He just gives you that strength to do what you need to do. And denial can be a healthy thing. If you don't need to see all of that, just go do what you
Mhm.
got to do at the time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so thank God for that praise report and continued blessings on your life and your body.
Thank you.
I did. I took the BRCA test because I did have a cousin. I mentioned an aunt who died of cancer, breast cancer, that made my mother fearful. Well, it's her daughter who also got breast cancer.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I need to go get this BRCA testing, and so I'm cleared so far. I came back negative. So I hear there's another one that I probably need to look into as well. So I'm not afraid to do that. I feel like it's really important to be as proactive as possible. But it is scary, and I will tell you, you're absolutely right. I'll just double down on what you're saying. If you are sick, what we tend to do, and I'm guilty of it as well, we just go handle our business. And even
Yes.
Odell, I'm thinking about your story that you just go and you go inward. You may have a
Yes.
whole lot of people around you, but
Hmm.
we don't talk about it. But you
No.
need a partner, somebody who will journey with you through it, particularly when you're going in, for doctors there, because you don't hear anything. My mother didn't have any clue, and I did it again with my dad. Howard K. Hill and I really were the caregivers for my dad when he passed away. We knew everything. We knew everything. We had to know what was happening. We saved his life by knowing things because the
Yeah.
doctors don't always have it right all the time.
Mm.
They just don't. So you have to pay attention and help them to understand, what's going on because the patient can't always translate as effectively. So I became my mother's interpreter for her and was very much in that journey. I mean, there was no call without me being there. So
Mhm.
having somebody with you to help you understand what's going on, and don't go inward. Just because what happens is you just you just isolate. I think that's just what we do because we usually can handle things, and when we can't, we go inward.
That's exactly what we do. We try, and that's exactly what I did. I have a question for you before I make a statement. Jody, did you learn that cancer is hereditary? Is it hereditary? Have you learned that?
I have. I guess what I'm learning is that there are different types,
Hmm.
and they're obviously, I guess I'm assuming from the genetic testing, and you can have a predisposition to cancer, which is why they have the testing to
Okay.
figure out if there's some genetic component to it. I don't know that they know if all of it is. But certainly there are some that they are clear in which we have a genetic predisposition to it. So
Okay.
you have to go see if you're in that category because you can be proactive, and the insurance will cover your being, proactive and preventative where that's concerned. And I've known a lot of people to have done that as well.
Thank you. That I hope our listeners hear you
Hmm.
being proactive and talking about it, because after my interruption with John, I knew my body felt different, but I didn't say anything. I didn't know I didn't have the terminology to explain it. I knew I felt different, but I didn't know how different. I knew the weight of what I was carrying changed my behavior, my attitude, my outlook, and started self-med, drinking more, and just became angry. And it was a whole year that I kept it to myself, didn't say anything until I had the brain aneurysm. And even when I had it, getting ready to get in the car to go to work, my headache went from 0 to 10 in seconds. Eyes were blurry, got sick, passed out in the grass. And I still go inside and don't say anything because I'm going to take care of myself. I know I must be, asthmatic or allergies or something. And it's a whole 24 hours before I go to a hospital and realize that I'm bleeding in my head. And, like the doctors, even when I went to the hospital and my doctor sent me to the hospital with notes to the EMTs to tell the ER, this is what's going on. I got reported that I was just a black woman with a headache.
Mm.
And when I was at one unit, they kept me there for 5 hours and realized, oh, your doctor was right. And then we have to send you to another unit because we don't have the care to take care of you here. And the doctor said the same thing, stop praying for her, but plan her funeral. And then told Jackie and everybody, well, if she survives, then people tend to die 3 days after it. So we still got a 3 day window.
Wow.
So don't have hope. Just start planning her funeral. Then I'm here 3 days later. Well, she's still in ICU. And then, it was then for me, I realized that my son was dead and I was alive and I wanted to live.
Mm.
And I had to quote that over, chant it over and over. And like you say, spiritual. And I could just feel this angel looming. It's like, if you came down for anything, take this pain because I can't carry the pain and fight for my life. So I
Mm.
want to live. So I went from arguing with God to bargaining for my life. And 5 years, 4 years later, I'm here. And I'm grateful. And you're right, I should have said something earlier, but I did not know that brain aneurysms were hereditary.
I didn't know that.
And we don't talk about our
We
health
don't.
with our children.
No, we don't. We don't.
Yeah, there's so many secrets,
Yeah.
dare I say, in our community. And, compensation. I mean, I think we're just in survival mode a lot, but I think hearing my story and your stories, I mean, if it's anything, we just have to learn to do something different and break that cycle, and
Yes.
create avenues for us to talk to our kids in a different way that we were communicated with.
Yes.
Um, and then, nothing like a good girlfriend too. That somebody that you can
Yeah.
really, really, really trust and just get it out, even,
Hmm.
because we carry we carry so much. And my mother, she didn't tell a soul. She didn't tell a soul. She didn't tell anybody.
And I think sometimes it's not real until we say it out loud,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that probably was the fear, and we do have to get away from that. And so this is why these type of conversations are so important, and we have to spread it in our community. And it's a perfect time now. We talk about breast cancer in October, and
Yes.
there's breast cancer walks and events, and those are marvelous things because it does bring attention to it. But we need to talk about it all the time, all year long.
We do.
Because if we wait until October to try and get a mammogram, well, you're not. It's going to be rare that you can get it in October if you're waiting to
To
October,
October.
right?
That is true.
So you're months later, and by months later, then we find another excuse to say, "Oh, I can't make that appointment." And so we need to continually talk about this and share our stories of health, period, in our communities. And so, Jodi, again, thank you so much for
Yes.
sharing your story. And I want to flip a little bit now. One of the fun things, because I know Odell is a minister, but she's also my friend, so I can ask her anything that I want. And so I think we were just hanging out at my house one time, and I asked her, I said, "What do you do? Like, if you want to go out one night and you just want to hang out, you want to relax and just be Odell, and then all of a sudden someone comes up to you and kind of they're in conversation with you, and you recognize this conversation is changing over from someone speaking to Odell to someone to speaking to Minister Odell." And so, how do you switch that really quickly? And so I have the same question for you. You are a deputy commissioner over this massive agency, and you want to go out, and sometimes you just want to be with your family. Sometimes, like you said, your girlfriends and your sister-in-laws who are really your sisters, and you just want to relax, but you're just out somewhere, and all of a sudden, either one of your million of employees might come up to you and introduce themselves to you, or someone is coming up to you and kind of wants to speak to Deputy Commissioner Jodi. And so, how do you handle that type of situation?
Well, thank you for the question. In case I don't get a chance to mention this, I mentioned my sister-in-laws on my brother's wives, but I also am blessed to have sister-in-laws and my on my husband's side as well. So I don't want anybody to listen to this. It's like and we're like sisters. We
Yeah.
really, really are. It's like blurred lines. So nothing like family. And I am so blessed to have a family that's so close that we can be there for each other. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there because they mean so much to me, and I really wouldn't want them to listen to this podcast and not say
Wonderful.
I
anything.
say, Jodi, you didn't
How
talk
wonderful
about us.
my Lilly family is. They are just we're one happy family. We all kind of vacation together and all that kind of stuff.
That's wonderful.
So it's a wonderful, really. I mean, because sometimes families don't talk to each other, and I just, that's just a whole another conversation for another
Mhm.
time. But what would I do if somebody asked me that question? I've wrestled with this for a long time because some people say, you're when you're at work, you're at work, and when you're at home, you're at home. But what I know about who I am as a person and a professional is that who I am is very much a part of who I am in that role. So
Mhm.
I don't feel like I should shut that off because it's not between the hours of 8 and 5. I am who I am. I do what I do because I'm called to do this work.
Mhm.
And if somebody needs to ask me a question and it's 9 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, or during the workday, I should be prepared to fulfill that mission that God has put in me to help people in this way. So I don't just blurred lines all over the place. And I feel very strongly that you're, like I said, you're called to this work. And when you're called to do something, there's no off button. So there's no code switching. I am who I
Nope.
am. When you see me at work, I'm talking to you just like I'm talking to you right now. No code switching.
I used to threaten the kids all the time. Mess around. I said, I'm calling Jodi. She can come pick you up. I said, she will come. I said, my job is I'm supposed to feed you, take care of you. I said, you don't have to have your own room. Okay. if you don't do, I'm gonna call DCF. Don't worry about it. I got
Mhm.
the speed dial number right here. I will save you time. I will call her and come get you.
And
I,
I'll be like, hello, go listen to your mama.
That's it.
I used to threaten them all the time. I said, I don't care, call. I'll call DCF on you. I'll call DCF. Tell them to come get you.
That is funny. That's funny.
Oh, God.
So, Jodi, we're going to start to wrap up, but just a quick question for you. You have a lot on your plate, and so how do you practice self care of Jodi?
And
Mm.
before you answer that, I want you to, because there's different parts of
Yes.
Jodi, as you mentioned, and I want to make sure that we talk about all of you. We know that you're a member of the Lynx,
I am.
and you're a Jack and Jill,
I am.
and Chum, which I found, I don't know what Chum is.
It's another, organization just trying to get back to the community through friendship. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what I also found on social media, you are in a fellowship program. Can you give us a little bit information about that before you tell us how do you then take care of yourself?
Oh, wow. I am very blessed to have been selected as a Casey Fellow. The Casey is a philanthropic agency that works on a national level to improve outcomes for kids and families. So they work with child welfare systems across the United States. And they have a fellowship program, a 2-year competitive fellowship program where you, if selected, you get to work with fellows around the country, not only in child welfare, not only in child protective services, but in child welfare. So any system that touches a child. So we have a superintendent there. We have people from not private nonprofits. We've got other philanthropic agencies, people who are CEOs of philanthropic agencies, those kinds of things. And I'm actually the only person in a child protective service agency there out of the 15 fellows. And so as a fellow, I just came back from California. They fly you into different locations and they teach you, train you, and help you engage in activities to improve your systems within your role. So it was a hugely competitive program, very, very rigorous interview process. And yeah, it was 15 out of like over 200 people who applied across the nation.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
That's
Yeah, so I'm on that journey now, and really, really excited about that opportunity.
Well,
wonderful.
congratulations. Now, with all of that, how do you take care of Jodi? What do you do for self-care?
Uh, well, I take time. Well, definitely church is, kind of fills me up. I spend time with friends. I try to, I haven't been doing as much. I need to get back into it, but I really love to just walk, do exercising. When I was in California, we did really nice trails and stuff. So those kinds of things. But I'm just learning the importance of self care, taking the
Good.
time,
Good.
trying to
Thank
embrace it differently.
Well,
And
that's great.
that's important.
That's what we want to hear.
Yes.
So, Jodi, what Odell and I try to share is that life interruptions can sometimes be traumatic or just an interruption of our lives that can either be temporary or permanent based on our perspective of life. We'll continue to discuss the impact of trauma and how a moment in time can actually alter our journey. So, thank you for sharing the story of your mom. We appreciate how you shared how it impacted you and your family and even her. And that's important. And we'll continue to have these conversations in our community. Our podcast always is for anyone who needs to hear our message. And so to our audience, please like and subscribe to our podcast. And also, more importantly, share it with someone you think needs to hear our message.
Yes.
And Odell, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Yes, I In case I did not tell you, after I had my brain aneurysm, the doctors, didn't provide any support for me. And I realized someone had to tell me that I wasn't speaking properly and could not read my text messages. And when I went to Southern for support, they have a communication disorder department for brain injuries. I was assessed that the damage that was done after the brain injury, that I would only have an eighth grade reading level, and that would be it. And I told your brother, Howard K. Hill, and Howard said, "Don't believe that." He says, "You can restore your brain cells. You just have to learn how to learn differently." He says, "You can do that." And I said, "No one told me how to do that." And he said, "You can do that." And I heard him. And because he told me that, I took on the initiative of learning how to learn again, and to use audio, and to listen to people talk, and to just do different things to exercise my brain. And this month, I'm noticing new vocabulary. It's new for the last 4 years, but it's not new for my education. And I'm starting to speak differently, and I'm listening to myself. I hear the podcast and I go back and I can say, "Oh, that sounds better," or I can still see where I'm having issues, but I know I'm not at an eighth grade reading level. So your brother told me that I could do that. And I thank him. And I thank your mom and dad for raising wonderful people like you all. So thank you for being a part of my life and being on my journey and being a friend.
And thank you. I could say the same thing to you. My brother is a very special human being, and I'm not at all surprised that he would pour into your life to give you that, paradigm shifting sort of advice. So I appreciate you, ladies, for doing what you're doing. Please keep it up. This is a wonderful opportunity just to go deep into our community and into our mindset, so that we can learn how to help each other get through traumatic events in our lives. So I want to share my deep appreciation for all that you all are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And I owe you a book. I had one here for you, but I will make sure that I get it to you.
Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. And again, click on like, subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like us, subscribe to us. And thank you, and good night.